So Gruul smash. But did you know Gruul do big smash? Wrecking Ogre is a 5 mana red 3/3 Ogre warrior creature with double strike and Bloodrush, which, for the cost of 3 red and discarding this card, gives an attacking creature +3/+3 and double strike. Back to the good old well of combat tricks. As I've mentioned many times before, combat tricks are vastly underrated in Commander, and Wrecking Ogre is no exception. Neither, frankly, is his entire mechanic, Bloodrush, the Gruul mechanic from Ravnica 2, which appears exclusively on creatures and allows you to discard said creature for a mana cost to give their stats and keywords to another creature for a turn, essentially making all Bloodrush creatures combat tricks on bodies. These cards rectify a lot of the issues with combat tricks in Commander, and they win games whilst doing so. See, two big issues with combat tricks is they can be horrible dead draws when you have no board state, and they are very susceptible to counterspells, which can often result in missed player KOs or your creatures going bye-bye. However, Bloodrush creatures dodge both of these issues. One, because they can be played as creatures if needed, and the other because their combat trick abilities are just that, abilities, and thus can only be countered by stifle effects, which are far more uncommon than your common or guardian counterspell. And yet, none of these cards really see any play. Only Wasteland Viper cracks 10k decks, which is made more insane by the fact that Rubble Hulk was in the bloomin' Windgrace precon and still doesn't hit the mark. Yes, I know it's been 7 years since that released, but still, the precon effect is usually very strong. But bringing it back to Wrecking Ogre as well, I think that this is the most criminally underrated of them all, at not even 1,000 includes. And I genuinely don't get why. Granting +3/+3 and double strike, nigh uncounterably, and at instant speed, is unbelievably strong. It can completely swing the tide of a battle, turning chump blocks into profitable trades, or just straight doming a player's life total. This, in essence, reads, double target creature's power, and then give it 6 more extra as a little bit of a treat. If you whack this effect on an 8-power commander or a 2-power infector, it just knocks a player out in one hit, and this isn't even talking about the fun synergies with mechanics like Trample, Death Touch, and Wither. But with all that being said, however, I do actually know why it's so underplayed, aside from the Commander format's weird aversion to tricks. Simply put, it's 5 mana. For that price, why not just go for Berserker's Onslaught and give all your attackers double strike? It is a good argument, and I think for a good chunk of decks, that is the play. But not for all of them, and that's because Wrecking Ogre is a lover of a corner case. For one thing, as much as I was joking about it, that +3/+3 can be a big difference maker, especially in decks like Infect that love pumping power. Additionally, Wrecking Ogre and its Bloodrush brethren all have that fun, cheeky quality that a lot of combat tricks have, which is that they're able to be played on an opponent's creature for a sudden surprise knockout. Sure, it's not the most reliable way to win a game, but it sure as anything makes for a very fun story. But back to the actual reasons to play this card, since it's a creature that discards itself for its effect, it actually has a theoretical home in a nice little niche of different archetypes. For one thing, it goes so nicely in a deck that cares about discarding its own cards, the kind of deck that plays Surly Badgersaw, Magmakin Artillerist, and things like that, you know. Triggering on discard effects whilst significantly buffing a creature isn't exactly shabby, and in fact there's a suite of these commanders which also have combat damage triggers attached, where this thing is an absolute masterpiece as it can then trigger those effects twice as well. I'm talking specifically here about Captain Howler, Evora, and Borby Enraged, for those who are wondering. As for other archetypes that this has a home in, you've got a couple of obvious ones like Stompy and Warrior Kindred, but my personal favourite for this, weirdly, is Reanimator. You'll need to hear me out here, because while this is not certainly your top tier, best ever reanimation target, the summon big thing and win style Reanimator isn't the kind of deck that I'm talking about here. No, I'm talking more about the kind that leans a little bit more aristocratsy in a way. The kind where you're throwing a bunch of creatures into the bin for smaller bits of value, before dropping a Balthor the Defiled and summoning your big bunch of huge French vanilla schmucks back to the waking world. These are the kind of decks that love an evoke creature or a tortured existence loop, where Oversold Cemetery and a massive land cyclers are a mainstay. I am personally building a list for this kind of deck with Aiden Oakenshield at the helm, which is what inspired me to tackle this card, because it absolutely whips in there. Oh, and special mention does also go to Alessia Who Laughs at Fate, where this can pump Alessia to grab back much larger targets from your grave, while also being a pretty sweet reanimation target. I've kind of been downplaying it before, but a 3/3 double striker can definitely still do work, especially in a deck like Alessia, where it's not unreasonable that you'll be playing other pump spells. But yeah, you guys should play Wrecking Ogre. It crushes. And well, even if you don't like the Ogre, which I can kind of understand, at least try out some Bloodrush cards. They do so much more than you would think. And that's the video done with not a single illusion to Shrek. Mission accomplished, I think.